Hello, and welcome to Attract, Prepare, Retain, the 2020 OSEP National Summit on Improving Effective Personnel for Children with Disabilities. Before we get started, there are a couple of housekeeping items to cover that will guide you on how to interact with today's presentation. Today's presentation is broadcasted live, and all attendees will be muted for the duration of this event. Make sure that your computer speakers are not muted and the volume is turned up. To share your thoughts, comments, and observations on the content of the summit, please use the event's chat box located to the right of the main screen. If you do not see the chat box, please click the chat button on your Intrado control panel. If you would like to ask a question to presenters or event moderators during the summit, simply type your question in the Q&A panel located to the right of the main screen. To access the closed captioning for this event, please click the CC button on your Intrado control panel. Should you lose audio or video at any time, please refresh your browser. If you need further technical assistance, you can enter your question in the Q&A panel. At the conclusion of today's presentation, a brief evaluation survey will appear. Please make sure to complete the survey and provide us with feedback on the content of today's presentation. Now let's get started.
Hello, and welcome to the final presentation of our Attract, Prepare, and Retain Summit. For those of you joining us today for the first time, I'm Lori Banerjee, Director of the Office of Special Education Programs, and thank you for joining us. We are scheduled to have this summit last March, but as you all know, our lives change suddenly, and although we wish we could have this event in person, the silver lining is that this issue is one that impacts us all. And having a virtual event allows us to share this information more broadly. I have so enjoyed learning and interacting with our presenters over the past 2 days. The conversations have been rich and inspirational. And I'm so glad that so many of you have made time to join us. Today, we will explore strategies and practices to retain effective personnel to teach children with disabilities. For those of you who have been with us for the previous 2 days, welcome back. And for those of you just joining, I want to provide a bit of context for you. Today's final presentation will follow the same structure as the previous 2 days. We have invited experts from other fields to share their expertise in each of these areas. A panel of practitioners in education and related fields to share their perspectives and experiences, and a special educator to summarize the research, lessons learned, and leverage points for moving forward. Our focus this week is to explore innovative and creative possibilities, to challenge the status quo, and to empower each of us to reconceptualize how we attract, prepare, and retain effective personnel. I've been a lifelong educator, and during my past 2 years at the U.S. Department of Education, my primary focus has been on improving our ability to attract, prepare, and retain effective personnel for children with disabilities. This is the most critical issue for me, and as we work towards improving outcomes for children with disabilities, there is not a more important leverage point than ensuring that each child has a positive relationship with an effective teacher or provider. And our collective focus should be on supporting the practices and systems that make that a reality for every child. I've had the pleasure of talking with many of our presenters over the past week, and I think you will hear as I have both an inspirational message and a call to action from the remarks they will share with us today. We have learned from the changing roles of the professional chef, the training innovations in nursing, and today we conclude our summit with an expert who has studied the retention policies of successful companies. As you have heard, all have had important lessons to share regarding the changes experienced within their fields that may be useful as we look for innovative paths within education. Shortly after this summit concludes today, we will have the archived versions posted at osepideasthatwork.org, and we encourage you to share them. At that site, you can also find a new resource page on Attract, Prepare, and Retain that brings together federal resources, state efforts, and resources from related organizations that you may find useful in your own efforts, whether you are a practicing teacher, administrator, state or district leader, organization, or community leader. Today's focus is on retaining personnel to effectively serve children with disabilities. Why is retention so important? There are many benefits of having an experienced workforce, including cost savings. But the most important reason is that more experienced teachers lead to better outcomes for students. An inability to retain teachers disrupts learning, disrupts schools, disrupts budgets. Novice teachers rotating in and out of the school year negatively impacts school climate and student performance. Retaining effective teachers improves student learning. We know that induction and mentoring is a critical component to ensuring teachers' professional careers are successful. The more supported teachers are in their early careers, the more likely they are to stay in the profession. At least one study demonstrated the first-year teachers who leave based on poor support and induction may be more effective than those that stay. This is even more evidenced by the importance of dedicating time and resources to an effective and comprehensive orientation and induction strategy. We also know the critical role that school principals have in enhancing the retention of teachers. The principal sets the tone for the school culture and context and is responsible for both hiring teachers that are a good fit for their school, as well as making sure they are supported to become successful contributors to the school culture and context. We need to continue to enhance the training of our school leaders to ensure they have both the technical and interpersonal skills to engage, empower, motivate, and excite their teachers about learning. Teachers that leave the classroom report a lack of support from their administrators as one of the most common reasons for leaving. As with the previous two topics, retention is a challenge that will require a collaborative effort. What happens at the school is critical, but other stakeholders must also engage in improving retention efforts. We need to continue to look for innovative ways that communities, counties, and state boards can work with districts to create and provide incentives that go beyond signing bonuses to incentivize retention, such as reduced taxes, discount housing, community discounts, and loan forgiveness. How do we reconceptualize professional development and support throughout a teacher's career? How can schools and districts prioritize improving the effectiveness of current teachers, giving them leadership opportunities that do not force them to leave the classroom? How do we make the more challenging teaching positions more attractive? Simply placing our novice teachers in the most difficult positions is not a strategy to increase retention. Offering mentoring and teacher leader opportunities to expert teachers is shown to increase the skills and satisfaction of both beginning teachers as well as our veteran teachers. There are innovative state efforts to address innovation. Massachusetts holds 4 different leadership institutes to provide ongoing opportunities for collaboration, coaching, and ongoing technical assistance. The Georgia Teacher Pipeline Summit, which I had the privilege of being part of, is an annual event in which various Georgia stakeholders include state education agency personnel, educator preparation programs, alternative preparation programs, local education agency personnel, school level staff, and OSEP leaders work collaboratively to develop a comprehensive approach for improving and strengthening the teacher pipeline in Georgia. Teams focus on short and long-term talent management strategies to attract, prepare, and retain effective teachers and leaders for all students, including those with disabilities. In Indiana, they have a teacher leader boot camp focused on the retention and development of high-quality teachers across the state, including special educators. In addition, the State Director of Special Education in Indiana funded CEC memberships to all first-year special education teachers, including the first-year teacher guide, to improve additional support and access to information and resources during their beginning years. Based on feedback from those teachers, the program will expand to include all first and second year special education teachers as a strategy to both support and retain them in their positions. Speaking of CEC as a professional organization, they recently offered its first Jumpstart professional development program, designed specifically to support special educators in their first 3 years of teaching. This program focused on prioritized topics for teaching during the pandemic and provided participants with virtual mentoring opportunities with the program presenters, as well as establishing a network of peers for ongoing professional support within the program's cohort. Our OSEP funded centers are also supporting retention efforts. This past year, our centers clearly demonstrated their ability to support teachers and families as learning suddenly changed from classrooms to dining rooms. I have been very impressed by the high quality resources developed by our centers to address the emergency needs of teachers and providers to quickly change to distance and remote learning. These resources can be accessed through our COVID resource page on the osepideasthatwork.org. An example of new jointly developed resource by CEDAR and NCSI is helpful for retention of educators during the COVID-19 times and beyond, as schools revisit how they provide effective instruction. The brief outlines how high leverage practices can be employed to strengthen distance learning instruction for a diverse range of students by providing strategies to address common challenges students experience. I encourage you to visit the site and take advantage of the resources and supports. OSEP also supported 2 grant programs this year, one designed to help states address their retention efforts, and another model demonstration program, both in early childhood and K-12, that explores coaching models to support teacher development. I look forward to the outcomes and resources we can share from those investments. Now let's hear from our experts. I would like to introduce our first speaker. Peter Banerjee is co-founder and CEO at Startup Voyager, a content and SEO agency helping startups across North America and Europe scale up organic website traffic. He was earlier a leadership trainer and coach and has delivered programs for companies across several industries, including British Telecom, Calibrated Healthcare, and more. His work has appeared in top blogs like Entrepreneur, Inc., HuffPost, Fast Company, Life Hacker, and more.
Hello, this is Peter Banerjee, and I'm here to talk about employee retention strategy. So first of all, I would really like to thank the US Department of Education for inviting me for this presentation. Being a teacher is one of the most important jobs in the world, and it's an honor to be able to participate in this program. So let me start by sharing my screen. Okay, so a little bit about me. I used to be a leadership trainer and coach, so I was quite familiar with different retention methodologies employed by different companies across the world. Currently, I'm the co-founder and CEO at Startup Voyager, which is a content and SEO company with 22 employees across 6 countries. We are 100% remote, and that's why employee retention is super important for us, even though we are a small company. So let's first begin by talking a little bit about the research methodology that we used. So it all began when I wrote an article on employee retention strategies for a productivity software company called Time Doctor. And what we did in order to write this article is we reached out to several companies that most of you would have heard of. So pretty well-known names like Adidas, Accor Hotels, Airbus, Bosch, Dell, EY, Evernote, Ericsson, Glassdoor, Indeed, Jaguar Land Rover, Mars, Microsoft, PwC, SAP, Southwest. So how did we come up with this list of companies? So what we did was we started looking at the world's best places to work list, the great places to work list, and uh, also the Glassdoor best places to work list from 2016 and 2017. And from that, we selected a pool of companies and then we reached out to them. And the result was this article, which also got picked up by Inc. And essentially, this article includes quotes from senior leaders at all these companies. And the presentation that I'm going to be giving today is going to be based on the inputs that we got from these companies. So let's move on to the 10 strategies. So the first thing that I want to talk about is valuing people's inputs. In order to retain employees, you have to show people that their ideas, inputs, and opinions matter. You need to demonstrate that very, very tangibly, and it shouldn't just be lip service. You actually need to take initiatives and build systems in order to take people's inputs actively every single day. So you could just listen to them during meetings, but do have systems in place to collect their inputs, have a leadership structure in place which encourages listening to people and taking inputs from them. And a couple of companies which mentioned this were Accor Hotels and Schneider Electric. And for example, here you have Karen Clark talking about where they have a voice and their opinions matter. And this is not difficult to understand. Being able to express yourself and being able to express your own opinions is a very fundamental human need. And so it should not be a surprise to anyone that this is really one of the most important things which will increase employee engagement and consequently lead to higher employee retention. So let's move on to the second point, which is creating an culture of innovation. So you need to create a culture of innovation and continuous improvement. Now, please keep in mind that this is only possible if the previous point is implemented, because in order to create a culture of innovation, you have to listen to people's ideas all the time. And all of those ideas are obviously not going to work. Only maybe 1 or 2% of those ideas will actually reach an execution stage. But that doesn't matter because that's perfectly normal. Only when you have 100 ideas do you have one which is actually executable. And you need to get people excited about creating something new, make people excited about their jobs. And one of the easiest ways of doing that is to get them excited about creating something, being creative, creating something new. And Airbus and Bosch are two companies which mention this. For example, Airbus said that it's extremely important for them to be able to innovate and create technology before anyone else does. And the fact that Airbus is at the forefront of innovation is a super motivator for its employees. Which brings us to the next point, which is about making a difference. Now, people will stay with you if their jobs make an actual meaningful difference to people's lives. So innovation is fine, but is it innovation which is actually making a difference to people's lives? Is that creativity actually making a difference to people's lives? And for education, this should be very, very easy to implement because education is the foundation of a society. Without education, a society cannot develop or thrive or prosper. So it's obviously making a difference to people's lives. But what you need to do is reiterate that. You need to remind people and make it clear to them again and again and again that the job they're doing is making a tremendous difference to people's lives. And one interesting thing that we came across is that you should also think about how people can make a difference to people's lives outside of work. So for example, Zendesk encourages people to get involved in giving back outside of work through its CSR team. So moving on to the next point, communicate your expectations very, very carefully. Because when people are unclear about what is expected of them, they will not be able to perform their jobs to the fullest potential. And if they are not able to, they're obviously not going to be happy with their performance. You're not going to be happy with their performance. And eventually they're going to get frustrated. They're going to get frustrated with the system and they're going to leave. So what you want to do is give them clarity about what is expected of them. Make it very, very clear, documented, reiterated, talk about it again and again as frequently as you can, and have a discussion about those expectations as frequently as possible. Aegis Living is one company which talked about setting the right kind of expectations with employees. And let's now talk about one of the most important employee strategies, which is training. You absolutely have to let people develop within the organization. If they do not develop, if they stagnate, if they do not grow, then they're pretty much bound to leave. It's just a question of when. So training is one thing which can help them grow professionally. This can help them do better in their jobs every single day. And it can also help them grow in their, it can also help them clearly understand a particular career path. So, and try to invest in training which is more personalized, something like mentoring and coaching. IBM, BASF, and SAP are companies which invest heavily in training. For example, IBM uses its cognitive technologies like Watson to deliver personalized learning and career guidance that's based on employees' role, skill profile, and goals. Now, you do not have to use artificial intelligence and machine learning in order to deliver personalized training. I mean, you can still do it simply by initiating a mentoring program and just by talking to people more often and by understanding what they want and delivering the relevant training to them. And the next point is collaboration. You need to create a culture of collaboration where people are always helping each other out. People are helping each other do their jobs, meet their goals, sharing information, collaborating and talking about best practices, talking about what's working and what's not working, helping each other out in any way that they can. And you need to build systems to reward collaboration. So it's fine to go ahead and tell people, okay, you should collaborate more, but you need to build that into your reward systems. You need to have systems in place. So your human resources should actively encourage it. Leadership should encourage it, and so that people actively make an effort to collaborate. Companies which have spoken about this are Adidas, BASF, and Ericsson. BASF, for instance, said that it's important to have an inclusive environment where employees feel that they care and their work matter, and where they can continue to grow in workplaces that are collaborative and safe. Which brings us to a point which is slightly different than the other ones that we have talked about so far, which is employee wellness. Now, in the 21st century, employee wellness has become super important in all organizations which are thriving. If you do not pay attention to employee wellness, it's going to create, essentially employees are going to burn out at some point in time or the other. You don't want them working too hard. You want them to have work-life balance. You need to create systems through which they can develop personally. So it could be perhaps initiatives to have maybe meditation sessions once a quarter, or maybe a yoga retreat, anything which makes them, which helps them unwind, as well as have systems which regularly allow them to be more flexible at the workplace. And flexibility is not something which is going away. Nearly everybody is working from home at the moment, and this trend is only going to go. So once the pandemic is over, this is not going anywhere. A lot of people are never going to go back to office, and this is so essentially when you have a large segment of the population which is never going back to office, other parts of the population which have a job which requires them to go to office is going to demand more flexibility. So yes, teachers might have to go to, teachers would have to go to class. However, what you want to do is you want to have programs which give them more flexibility. For instance, make their jobs more flexible in the sense that if they have something urgent, they can probably maybe come in late and somebody else fills in for them, and you rearrange schedules in order to accommodate for that. Now, this might have sounded like a luxury even 5 years back, but given the world that we are living in right now, flexibility is something that everyone is looking for. And if you can incorporate a little bit of flexibility, it really goes a long way into showing employees that they are valued and making their lives far more easier, especially for especially for parents, for instance, right? So yes, flexibility is not going anywhere. It's taking center stage, and it's just going, the demand for flexibility is going to go up again more and more. Two companies which mentioned this are Ericsson and Manulife, among other companies. Ericsson said that promoting work-life balance is super important for them. Now, let's move on to the next one, which is career development. Now, we've talked about growth before and training before, but this is slightly different. Here, we're essentially talking about matching skills with open positions. Everybody is not going to be good at every single thing. So try to understand what is it that an individual is good at and try to fit them into a role which matches their skill set. And this is not always easy to do, but if you can do this, it's going to allow, especially the people who are more talented, it's going to allow them to stick around a lot longer. One company which spoke about this is Bayer, and essentially Bayer talked about assessment and development centers which look at employees' personal strengths and development opportunities in the context of leadership requirements, and then they're evaluated for different challenges and prepared for higher leadership roles. And then let's talk a little bit about changing roles. What if you have pretty much tried everything, but it hasn't worked? People are somehow still not fitting in. Now, at that point of time, you have two choices. Either the employee is going to go, but what if you could put that person in a different role where they are more fulfilled? So instead of losing the employee and losing all the investment that you've made in the employee throughout the years, you retain that employee, you hold on to that person, and you put them in a role where they are more fulfilled and then they're more satisfied. So yes, give them the opportunity to change their roles. Companies which do this are Airbus, Bosch, and Ericsson. And for example, in a company like Bosch, it's easier because there are different functions, there are different departments, so it's easier. And finally, one question which a lot of people ask is, all right, so these are, so there are quite a few retention strategies here. Which one do I start with and which one do I implement? And how do I know what's going to work for me? And the answer for that is just go ahead and ask them. Ask them what's important for them. Ask them what it is that matters to them, which is exactly what Dell does. Dell uses surveys to understand what people want and what truly matters to them. And to quote Michael Dell, you need big ears. So you need to ask people, and asking people is the easiest way to figure out what really matters to people, the specifics of what actually matters to people. Theoretical knowledge is fine, but at the end of the day, you need to understand what really matters in your context. And the best way to do that is to run these surveys. And other companies run surveys as well, like EY, PwC, Evernote, SAP. All of them run periodic surveys to gauge employee engagement levels and a lot of other things. So asking people what they want, asking people what's important to them is about knowing exactly, is about, it essentially takes out the guesswork. You don't really have to guess, you don't have to surmise. This gives you exactly what you need in order to launch the right initiatives. And so if you notice all these points, the one thing that you will notice is that employee retention isn't really too complicated to understand. It's simple really. Ask people what they want and just follow a few basic principles of human nature. What do people want? People just want to work in a friendly environment, and that's collaboration. People want to grow. That's career development is what we've spoken about. People want to be able to contribute something meaningful to society. People want to give back only if you give them the opportunity to do so. People want their jobs to have meaning. People want their lives to have meaning, which is what you're doing by creating an innovative work culture and showing them how their work changes people's lives. So employee retention is really about following some basic principles of human nature. And yes, you do need to run surveys to understand specifically what wants, but keep the basic principles of human nature in mind, and you're essentially halfway there to be able to retain your best employees. And that's all that I have for this presentation. Thank you very much once again for having me. And if you want to reach out to me, my email ID is peter@startupvoyager.com. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Peter. Definitely some innovative ideas that we can continue to explore. Now I would like to introduce our panel. And additional information on their bio can be found at osepideasthatwork.org. Jeffrey DeWitt is the Independent Chief Financial Officer for the District of Columbia. He's responsible for its approximately $16.7 billion operating budget and also manages the city's $8.2 billion capital improvements plan budget. Troy Smith is a consulting manager with a public impact, focusing on helping districts and schools implement opportunity culture. Opportunity culture restructures pre-K-12 schools to extend the reach of excellent teachers, principals, and their teams to more students for more pay within a reoccurring school budgets. Rebecca Heinz is an associate professor at the University of Central Florida. She's the principal investigator on a new personnel preparation project, preparation through residencies and enhanced partnerships, which places doctoral students in residencies in high-need schools to conduct research, provide support to teachers, and coordinate community-based experiences for undergraduate education students. And Manza Joseph is assistant principal of instruction at Irmo Middle School in South Carolina. He was the Lexington and Richland School District 5 Teacher of the Year in 2016-17 school year. He is a member of the Call Me Mr. program for male educators.
Thank you, Lori, for having me at your conference today. It's an honor to be here. I would like to talk a little bit about retaining teachers in education from a perspective of a general government. As you're aware, I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the District of Columbia, and I have about 1,700 individuals under my supervision that range from customer service clerks to PhD economists. So a wide range of different people that serve the district government, including the CFO for the University District of Columbia and the CFO for the public schools as well are under my purview. All financial operations are under an independent CFO in the District of Columbia. And when we look at, I came to the District of Columbia 7 years ago from Phoenix, Arizona previously, And one of the things was, how do you attract the best and brightest to be a best in class type organization, and how do you keep them? Because not unlike teachers, general government cannot pay what the private sector does, although we need people as good or better than some of the top consulting firms to do the things that we need to do. And we want the best and brightest people working in government. How do you do that? How do you attract and retain those people and not lose them to the private sector, or get them to go into other careers that maybe they would like to do instead? And so one of the things that we have done in the District of Columbia over the last 7 years since I've been here is really developing a purpose-driven organization. We're the finance arm of the nation's capital. Our job is to ensure the long-term financial viability of the nation's capital for everybody that comes here, businesses, individuals, the government. We're the seat of the one of the most powerful countries in the world, and so we want to make sure it's run well. And it is considered a AAA city, one of the best run financial entities in the United States. It's also the 20th largest city. And so it is getting our employees to understand you cannot have a higher purpose in public finance than making sure that the federal government's seat is well run and financially well managed. So it is making people aware on a daily basis how important their job is, how important it is to collect taxes, how important it is to do everything else. And I don't know how you can get a more important job than being a teacher. I have a daughter that is a beginning teacher right out of graduate school. I have another one that teaches at a university as one of the librarians, and she teaches there. I have my sister is a university professor. So I've been surrounded by teachers my whole life. And if you don't get how important that is and the purpose of that right now, all you have to do is talk to those parents that are working at home right now, trying to do their job, and meet with me on a Teams meeting for the next, right after this, where their kids are running around, they're trying to keep their kindergartner focused on the monitor. It certainly, purpose-driven is there in the teaching world, and it needs to be emphasized and reminded. And I think other speakers have talked about, how important and how critical the role of teachers are in our economy and everything else that we do. And so purpose is certainly there. The other thing is we've developed a value-based culture. So we went through a long process to define the values, the culture we want. And if you look at our logo for the Office of Chief Financial Officer for the District of Columbia, you'll see it says, be smarter. And SMARTER is an acronym developed by the employees. It says be service-driven, motivated, accountable, respectful, trustworthy, empowered, and results-oriented. And so that culture is driven all the time. So people who come to work here know their purpose. They know the values that we promote, hire, and everything we do is defined by those values that we have there. And one of the more important ones is empowerment, because one thing that makes people want to work at a place is, do they have the ability to make things better? Do they have the ability to make suggestions? Are they listened to? Are they respected? All those values really go into retaining. I have been able to, in the last several years, hire the CFO of Kashi Foods. It's a $1 billion company where that person could make 2 or 3 times more than they did here. I've hired people that are treasurers for Fortune 500 companies who've come to work for our office as a treasurer. The technology person is from one of the top consulting firms in the country that we have got to come into government because they want to have a purpose. They want to know that they're valued. They want to know that there's a culture around that they can be successful and be listened to and be independent in. And then flexibility is another thing. We're re-looking at our whole teleworking policy and flexibility even when this pandemic's over. They want an employer that is flexible, that respects them, that listens to them, that empowers them. And all those things have allowed us to probably hire a lot better than we did 5 years ago and attract people from the top companies who are willing to come and work in government. And it's not about the pay, it's about the purpose, it's about the values, it's about the culture and doing things like that. And as another speaker spoke about, or will a little bit later, is recognizing your employees. We have a recognition and rewards program that goes along with the purpose-driven, the culture, and the values. And one of the biggest things, if you want to retain people, It's how they start depends on how long they stay. If you throw a teacher or a government employee into a job and you set them at a desk and you say, go figure it out, they're probably not going to stay. There's studies that show when you really welcome people, you bring them into the culture, you bring them into the organization, you show how to get them going quickly and show that you care about it, they're more likely to stay. So onboarding is a huge initiative that we have, and we track and see a few months after people get here how effective that they're onboarding. And then on top of all this, the thing that's really important, and I think we learned this as we work through it, you can have a purpose-driven organization. You can have a value-based culture that people really like the values and they want to be part of that organization. You can go to be best in class. You can bring the brightest and most effective people in, but you have to be able to do that through the managers and supervisors or the principals in the case of the front office staff in the case of a school, is they have to know how to do that. And many times, whether it's a principal or it's a treasurer in my office or a controller or whatever it may be, they often rise because they're really good at being a teacher, or really good at being an accountant, or really good at being a finance person. We assume they know how to manage and they know how to be appreciative of people and they know how to take care of folks. You can't assume that. And what we've learned to get the culture embedded, to get all the things I talked about to hire the best and brightest and keep them, is that we had to do some training of our managers. So manage the training programs to make sure principals and again, in my case, the executive staff know how to do the soft skills that are important, and having a workforce that people want to work in is important. And we went all the way down to having executive coaches for our executive team. And we're using the same executive coaches that NASA uses, the same firm that they've used for several years to train their executive team. And it's really for them to have a place to learn how to be a better manager and be a better treatment to their employees. People don't often leave because they're not paid well enough. Believe it or not, they leave because of their manager or their supervisor. So if you really want to retain people, you have to have a person at the top, or people that are in charge, or people that are mentoring, people that know how to manage and they know how to treat people well, and they know how to do the things that people appreciate. People leave because of a bad boss, not because of a lack of pay in many cases. And I think when you couple all that together, our ability to hire is off the charts from where it was, let's say, 5 years ago. And I think the things that we've learned here in the District of Columbia, in the Office of Chief Financial Officer, again, 1,700 employees. It's like a very, very large school, because we cover a city, state, county, and a school district. We do everything a state does, everything a county does, everything a city does, including hospitals, universities, and everything else. Is those lessons we've learned has allowed us to hire better. We keep people longer, and even the people that leave, they want to come back. And so that's the lessons that I think can be applied to schools. And I think it would work. It works in the private sector too, and that's where we copied many of the ideas from. And I certainly think it retains. People want to be appreciated. They want to have a purpose. They want to be part of something. And I don't know anything more important than being a teacher right now, and how all those things could be applied and help in that area. So thank you. It's again an honor to speak to you and give you our perspective from the government side, and how it can be applied into the education side. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciated the focus on purpose, value, and culture. But I think the piece that was really important was the quote that you had is, how they start decides how they stay. And that's a really, really important message. So I'd like you to follow up a little bit more on how you went about developing the value-based culture that you talked about.
Yeah, we went through an exercise with our executive team to start, and the question we asked was, what are the characteristics of the people that you are your best employees, and what are the characteristics of your worst employees? And through that discussion and exercise, we defined the values that we were looking for, the characteristics we're looking for, and then we took it out to all 1,700 employees in a workshop and said, what do you think? What kind of person would you like to work with? What kind of values would you like to work with? So that be smarter that I talked about, the service-driven, motivated, accountable, respectful, trustworthy, empowered, and results-oriented, was driven by the employees. That is their view of what they wanted. So they own it. And, you know, really important, and whether it's a school or a business or a government, when they own what they want, they're more likely to do it. And it has been really, really successful. It was a long process, but we have t-shirts, people talk about it, people know what it means, and it's really, really transformed our office, not only to be better, but it makes you better able to implement technology projects because you're more of a team, you have common values. Our performance evaluation system is driven by it. 50% of your performance is driven by your living the characteristics of those values, and 50% is on your technical to show the importance of it. We recruit on it, we hire on it, and unfortunately, sometimes we even have to terminate on it for those that don't want to be accountable, for example. So it's really become embedded in the last few years.
Great. Another question I have for you is, how do you foster a sense of empowerment among staff that leads to their retention?
Well, one of the things that when I first came here, there's a book called The Alice Principle, and it's you know, about Dorothy. You know, you always had it in you, you always knew how to do it. So the comment that I make is see it, own it, solve it, do it. If you see something, own it. Don't assume it's someone else's problem. So see it, own it, solve it, figure out how to do it, and then do it. So we empower people if they see a problem to bring it up. So we actually have hired, and it's a position that I created when I came here, as a chief innovation officer. It's a position that reports directly to me and the chief of staff. And we have a portal where if you see something that you think could be better, report that doesn't work well, the way we do something, a process, you can put in your ideas and it gets heard by the organization and you get recognized for it and you get rewarded for it. So we have a continuous improvement portal where you can submit your ideas in, and it's overseen by the chief innovation officer, who's also really our culture officer, whose job is to go around and make sure we're doing the things to continue to enhance and promote our value-based culture. But it's that ability for people to understand, if you see something wrong, don't suffer in silence. You have the ability and the right to fix it. And I had to do that in Phoenix back in during the Great Recession when I was a CFO there, because we had to cut 30% of our staff. And I had no idea how to run a finance office with a 30% cut of staff. And the employees had to come with ideas how to do that. When it was all over, we ran more efficient than we did before, but it was from employee ideas and employee empowerment. And when you have independence and you're empowered, you're happier, you like your job better because you know you can fix things, and you're more likely to stay.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. And now I would like to invite Troy to join me.
Thanks, Lori. Thank you so much for that. Really excited to be here at the summit, talk retention with you, and speak a bit more about our work at Public Impact. First, our mission at Public Impact, I want to share that, is to improve education dramatically for all students, especially low-income students, students of color, and students whose needs historically have not been well met. We are not about incremental change. We're really about seismic big shifts in education. And the bulk of my work towards that goal is through our Opportunity Culture Initiative, which restructures schools and teachers' roles to extend the reach of excellent teachers and their teams to more students for more pay within recurring school-level budgets. So we work with districts and schools throughout the country. I think at last count, we were in 37 districts and over 300 schools. And almost all of whom, when we speak with them, they name retention as being a really critical issue that they are facing. So our work, we work with these districts to design and implement new career pathways for great teachers, advanced teacher leader roles, help them implement those in their districts, the primary role of which is what we call a multi-classroom leader. So multi-classroom leaders, they lead teaching teams, they provide guidance and frequent on-the-job coaching to those teaching teams while still continuing to teach, either having a small class load or they are reaching students via small group instruction. And for these advanced roles, MCLs are accountable for the results of all the students on the team. And for their new positions, MCLs earn sizable supplements, averaging 20% across our sites, but at times up to 50% of the teacher pay that the teacher would have otherwise received. So Well, these MCLs, these multi-classroom leaders are really the foundation of the opportunity culture work that we do. Districts also choose to implement other advanced roles when working with us, which allow members of multi-classroom leaders, those teacher leaders, members of their teams to also receive supplements. Some of our districts, I know Becky spoke to this a little bit earlier, also create teacher residencies as part of their opportunity culture design. They provide student teachers with paid full-year residencies working under that multi-classroom leader. So you can think about how powerful a clinical experience that is for a student teacher working in our opportunity culture schools. So we work with districts quite a bit to help them build these career pathways, design these new advanced teacher leader roles. But schools really carry the load when it comes to the redesign of their current staffing structures. So we work with schools really closely to figure out where they want to have these advanced teaching roles within their school buildings. We work with them to figure out how they want to reallocate their existing budgets to fund these high-paying advanced roles. We work with them really closely as well to help them adjust their schedules so that individuals who are in these multi-classroom leader roles have ample time during the school day for things like coaching, co-teaching, planning, and collaboration with their teams. So when we think about opportunity culture, we really see it as a critical strategy for retaining effective personnel, I think for a few different reasons. One, when we're looking at these new advanced roles being implemented in our districts, it provides opportunities for your best teachers, your great teachers, to advance in their profession by moving up, but not out of the classroom. They're able to still be in front of students, that they're not leaving for jobs in other sectors, they're not moving for jobs at a district office, they're still in a school building, they're still working with students, and they're working with teachers. So we think about our great teachers often craving, I think, opportunities to advance in their profession and seeing limited opportunities to actually do that in practice. So with opportunity culture, your excellent teachers can advance in their profession, they can move up, they can take on greater responsibility, and at the same time earn substantially more money in one of those advanced roles. But when we also think about retention, I think it's important to think about it from the standpoint of the team teachers as well. If you are a teacher working with a multi-classroom leader, you're on that team, you're getting daily support from a really great teacher leader. So you, as a team teacher, can continue to improve and meet the needs of your students. And I think when we think about retention being an issue among a lot of our teachers, it's because they don't feel successful, they don't feel supported, and overall working conditions just aren't exactly what they're looking for. They really want regular support that they may not be receiving at the moment. And so I also will name that teachers on these MCL teams, on these teaching teams with that advanced teacher leader, we have seen those teachers through third-party research really grow in their effectiveness. And I think retention often is really tied to effectiveness as well. I think teachers often leave the profession because they don't feel successful. They don't feel like they've seen an impact on their students. And so when working with a teacher leader, they get that regular support, but they're also seeing results from having worked with that advanced teacher leader. And though I know that the focus today is primarily on teacher retention, I also know that administrator, principal retention is also a problem in many of our schools and districts. And through opportunity culture and implementing these advanced multi-classroom leader roles, it really allows principals to drive change through distributed leadership, which allows them to save time, improve instruction, and hopefully make the job a lot more manageable for our principals who do such an amazing job, but their workload is substantial, is minimizing it. There's so much work that principals take on. And so having those teacher leaders to support with that work and really help drive instructional change throughout the school building is something that I also lift up as a real positive of our work. So while opportunity culture is not specific to special education, we have done some preliminary thinking, and we're excited about the possibilities in the special education context. You can think about excellent special educators extending their expertise to other special educators or even to general education teachers, and everyone collectively really improving their practice with how they work with students that do have learning differences. So that's kind of an overview of the work that we do and why we think it's really powerful for addressing teacher retention. Again, so excited to be on the panel today. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share a little more about our work and to learn from all of you.
Great. Thank you, Troy. You know, one of our primary focuses at OSEP this upcoming year is really working on the coaching and the mentoring aspect for teachers to really support retention. So it was great to hear you talk about that. I do have one question to start off with, and it's how do you identify and encourage your advanced teacher leaders? to take on the responsibility of being the support to your staff.
Sorry, Laura, you cut out there for a second. Can you repeat that question?
Oh, I was going asking a question about how you identify and encourage people to be your advanced teacher leaders and take the time to really support, coach, and mentor your staff.
Thanks, Laurie. Great question. That's actually a big component of the work that we do with districts, is figuring out how we select for individuals to take on these roles and earn these substantial stipends. So we work really closely with district staff to take stock of what the current selection process is, and we help them implement a really rigorous, highly selective pool process at the district level that's really competency-based, it's data-driven, and it ensures that the individuals that take on these multi-classroom leader roles are really well prepared to be successful once they're in those roles.
Great, thank you. A few minutes ago, you made reference to the opportunity culture. So can you say a little bit more about how schools can pay for that and maybe where that funding comes from?
Yeah, that's a great question, Lori. I think it's one we get quite often. So with opportunity culture, our aim is that these teacher leader positions, these advanced roles, are around for the long term. They don't fizzle out like a grant program, potentially. They really stick around. And that's why we really, core component of opportunity culture is the reallocation of existing budgets, school level budgets, and also the strategic use of some highly qualified paraprofessionals in some instances. But we're really looking at what money is already in hand and how can we creatively reallocate the fund at the school building level. And so there's a few ways that we often do this when working with schools. The first is many of the districts and schools we work with have existing vacancies that have been difficult to fill, potentially a good chunk of time. And so we work with them to trade those existing vacancies and repurpose those funds towards their opportunity culture design. That's probably most preferable because it is the most reliable long-term to repurpose based on those vacancies. But we also see schools take advantage of flexible federal funds like Title I that are hopefully more reliable year to year. We also see schools and districts repurpose coach or specialist positions and instead implement multi-classroom leader roles. So in short, schools have the funding available. We just work with them to creatively reallocate the funding that's at the proposal. And again, we see this as a really important part of opportunity culture, especially as we anticipate potentially budgets tightening. We want schools to be able to sustain the work and districts to be able to sustain the work long term. I will name that in a special education context, I recognize there are some additional challenges with additional regulations, staffing ratios sometimes play a role. It's a little bit more of a lift, but I think it's a lift that's definitely worth it.
Thank you, Troy, for sharing all of the information regarding your experience. And now I would like to invite Becky to join me.
Thanks, Lori. I really appreciate being a part of the summit and especially representing where we are and where we need to be with training teachers to stay in the profession. I think the first thing to consider is this idea of enhanced field experiences. And I know field experiences have been a part of what we've done in teacher prep for years. But in 2018, an AACTE report came out that kind of reinforced this idea of thinking more broadly about what we're doing with community embedded experiences in general and making sure that we are embedding experiences across every level of pre-service teacher preparation, not just waiting for that final internship culminating experience. And with classes as diverse as they are today, and with the expectations that are placed on teachers, a single experience isn't enough. I think we have to think a lot more broadly about what we're doing and when we're doing it. A second thing that, building on that idea, and this is traditionally in teacher prep, this idea of the field experience, but maybe it's time to think of a service learning approach to field experiences. And I'll tell you why. There is an element of service learning that differs from volunteering, and I don't think we're always trained in that in the field of education. In service learning, the goal is to identify a problem and then attempt to solve it. And that's a field outside of education. But this idea of thinking about what a problem is and what we can do to solve it, either as an individual or as a group, that is the cornerstone of service learning. And I think that can be the cornerstone of teacher preparation. if we could train these new teachers to think about every experience as an opportunity to solve a problem either for a school, a teacher, a child, then they're going to leave our programs ready to go out and really customize education and opportunities throughout their career. There is a lot of research that shows that another key point, which is teaching residencies, kind of extends on this. So if early in the experience, students are engaged in service learning and they are identifying problems in a school or identifying a problem that a principal's having and seeking to solve it, then the next step and the final step is a teaching residency. And a residency model really depends on a student being immersed for a year, just like a medical approach where someone is fully immersed in the profession. There's a lot of research to show that these residencies have been highly impactful and that lead to teachers staying in the profession, and most times in the very schools in which they did their residencies. We are currently, in our program, we implemented residencies and immediately saw that we were providing a service to the schools and we were meeting a need of the schools. And it really stemmed from that whole service model approach. One of our partnering districts was talking about how they really had this need for better trained paraprofessionals. So in thinking about that, I was like, wow, I have a whole lot of undergraduates who would love to be a paraprofessional. Is there a way to make that a part of my internship process? So in our case, we have placed students who apply for and find a position in a classroom as a teaching assistant. They can do that in what we call a teacher in residence. So they're working for the school, but they also have the benefit of all the mentoring and all the ongoing coursework that we provide. So when they leave us, they're so much better prepared for the reality of what's happening in schools. There are lots of places that are currently doing para to teacher approaches where we're going back and we're finding those people who are already committed to schools and we're preparing them while they're essentially on the job. So it's a similar approach. And one of our districts in our surrounding areas offering stipends for people to come in and do residencies in their schools. So there's a lot of residency programs across the country. And I think that kind of immersion is going to be critical for keeping people in place. Now, if you add on the layer of what's actually happening today in schools, it's changing everything. So classrooms are no longer a teacher standing in front of kids. And I think it's important to recognize that preparing students for what's actually happening right now may even need to be kicked up another notch. So this is a screenshot from literally last Monday when I had some students watching in as a local teacher was teaching students in the classroom, students online, using a smartboard, trying to manage all of this simultaneously. She's a fantastic teacher. She's prepared a great lesson, but now she's trying to engage a handful of kids who are joining her remotely. There's two cameras on her here. One is of her at the board, one of her is the class view so the students can see their friends, but there's so much to mentally manage here that it would be nearly impossible and overwhelming for somebody just entering the profession, and it would be hard for them to want to stay. It's hard for teachers today to want to stay under these circumstances. And yet we do have to prepare them for whatever it is that they face. And so how do we do that? An example, and again, getting back to kind of that service approach, is finding a way to reimagine these early field experiences. So one need in one of our local agencies is tutors for kids who are working remotely and working online. Well, guess what? I've got a whole lot of pre-service teachers who need field experience. So we're piloting a virtual remote tutoring lab. My students are trained to go in there and solve whatever problems kids come in with. And it's pretty interesting. If you show the next slide, the fun thing about it is that these young teachers, they have not even had a lot of experience teaching in a classroom, and yet they may come in and find, here's a student with significant disabilities, here's the book she's reading, and go. And their early feedback is that it's been really rewarding because they feel like they get a chance to talk to kids, but they're also doing something that feels good for them. And I think that's another part of retaining teachers, is to make sure they feel better about what we're doing. And so as we, kind of wrap up some of these thoughts, if we think about what we need moving forward, we need to prepare teachers to be more nimble. A lot of our programs are so structured that it doesn't give pre-service teachers the opportunity to problem solve and to think on their feet and to be thrown into the chaos that is sometimes our profession. So if we're not preparing young teachers to be ready for anything, then I think we're not preparing them well to stay in the profession.
Oh, Becky, thank you for all of your thoughtful words. There's a couple things that really hit home to me. And one was about making sure that we're enhancing field experiences in all level of preparation. So it can't be just a one-time opportunity that I think took place for myself way back in the early days, but an opportunity to really have that practice embedded across the board. But the one comment that you made that I think all of us need to really remember and take home is train as an opportunity to solve a problem. That's a really powerful, powerful statement. And I love that one. So, but I'm really excited actually to hear a little bit more about the residency model. So I have a question for you that I think would be really helpful for the field. What would be the first step in developing a residency model for pre-service teachers?
Well, Lori, I always answer almost every question the same way, and that is to find a convenient and trusted community partner to start. So sometimes, especially, we're in a big institution, my colleagues across the country, some of us are in huge institutions. It's hard to get footing and you can't change everything at once. So we always pilot something first with a convenient partner. And that was the case in our residency model. We piloted this with we started with one school. We started with one school to kind of the proof of concept. We found that it really worked. And now with that particular, it was a smaller school district. With that particular school district, we had so much success that now the principals just call and say, hey, we've got 3 teacher in residence spots. So if you have students who want those, and then I will send them to that school. We have been able to scale it up because we had the footing. So we started with a convenient, fast, flexible partner so that we could get the kinks out. And now we've scaled up to our bigger partners. So pilot and convenient partners.
And scaling up.
Scale up.
We want to scale up. Yes. All right. Great. Thank you for sharing that. Another question that I have for you is, from your experience working with schools and teachers, what key skills would you say all new teachers entering the field need today to really be successful in the profession?
I think the main skills that teachers need, I mentioned the key one, which was problem solving, but they also need new things. They need to know more about managing their own stress and managing their own time. I think time management is kind of overlooked. A lot of programs traditionally have been kind of prescriptive. So if we don't give students choice before they become teachers, they're not great at making decisions and choosing things when they're in the field. So adding layers of choice when we can. In our case, we let students choose placements. So even those community embedded experiences that I mentioned, we have a menu. They choose the day and time they want to go in and do it. We don't tell them you do this every Tuesday and Thursday. We don't tell them you need to use this tool. We give them a lot of layers of choice. So they need to be good at making decisions and being more independent. And then finally, I think that it's become very evident that everybody needs not just computer skills, but they need, not a single tool, but an understanding of, hey, there are tons of resources out there to make things on the computer more accessible. There are built-in features, and I think every new teacher needs to know that better so they can use them themselves and show students how to use them.
Thank you, Becky, for sharing the information on the residency programs. And now I would like to invite Mansa to join me.
Thank you, Lori. It is a pleasure to be here at the summit to talk retention. Um, I am. It is near and dear to my heart as an administrator to think about how we support and retain our teachers. But before I can even get into the role of an administrator in retention, we have to think about what it is that teachers do and my beliefs about teaching. I think teachers have one of the most important careers in the world. They are growing kids academically, socially, emotionally. They are challenging kids to be problem solvers and critical thinkers. They're growing kids every single day. And our future leaders are sitting in classrooms right now being developed by the teachers that love and care for them. Moments ago, you heard from Becky, and you heard how she said how overwhelming it can be for teachers, especially now. But we're not saying that it's easy. We are saying that it's necessary. Our teachers are building and saving not only our students, but their families, our communities, our schools, and even on a larger scale than that, when we really think about it, they're saving our states, our country, and ultimately they're saving our world. And for so many of our kids, our teachers are either changing or enhancing who they are. For some kids, teachers are literally saving the world through their eyes. Their entire perspectives have been shifted, have been changed because of a teacher. That's why I firmly believe that our teachers are champions, they're rock stars, they are heroes for what they do. Back in 2017, when I left the classroom, I stepped into administrator with one leadership style in mind, and that's of a servant leader, which I personally believe is the best way to lead. And ultimately, I think that's the role of administrators when we start thinking about what their role is in helping with retention and retaining teachers. It's to serve our teacher heroes, to make sure that they have what they need to be successful. I think about teachers sort of like they're Batman. They're going out into Gotham every day. They're donning the cape, they're wearing the mask, and they go out to do the necessary work every single day. There are sometimes negative storylines, people that might focus in on what they're doing wrong, but there are so many people that depend on what they do every single day. And I have to mention our support staff, our custodians, our cafeteria workers, counselors, mental health workers, and so many more people that play a role for our students. But I kind of think of them like Robin. They're there for support of our heroes. They're there right alongside. Sometimes they're behind the scenes. Sometimes they're tackling things so our heroes can tackle other things. Administrators, how do they play in this analogy? I believe administrators are kind of like Alfred. Our job is to be an extra set of eyes for our heroes, is to observe, to give critical feedback, that hopefully the positive relationships that we have built will allow them to acknowledge and know that it's coming from a caring place. It's there to support them with whatever they need. Our job is to serve our heroes because they have to do the hard work, the work that the school is all about. And that is serving and growing our kids, educating our future leaders, building them, pushing them to the standard. And the standard has not changed, it will not change. It's best. And our teachers understand that. They understand that they're pushing each kid to their individual best. And what is the role of an administrator? To serve and support our teachers. And if we can do that, I think our teachers will be successful. I think our students will be successful.
Thank you, Mansa. Those are also some really great words. I think another piece that you mentioned that was so important is serving the world. And I think you talked about that not only from a teacher perspective, but also from an administrative perspective. So I really appreciate that. And I also want to say thank you for acknowledging the importance of the support staff. Support staff are really there to help to support our heroes, as you had stated that. So a follow-up question that I have for you, as you had made mention to the servant leader piece of it, is why is servant leadership so important when thinking about supporting and retaining personnel?
The main objective in servant leadership is to serve the people around you. And the reason I got into education was because of the Call Me Mr. program. In short, without getting too deep and emotional and telling personal stories, I'll say that Call Me Mr. is a teacher recruitment program that is not only building just the number of people in the teacher pool available, but it's also diversifying the teacher pool. One of the core tenets and beliefs of Call Me Mr. is servant leadership. We are always challenged to reflect on, are those that we serve growing? Are the people that we have relationships, are they getting better? And as an administrator, when we start talking about retaining personnel, teachers want to see that. They want to see that you're able to serve them. You have to be selfless. You have to acknowledge the fact that their needs are important, and that goes a long way to building those positive relationships. And positive relationships are what make schools run. Successful schools are built on positive relationships. So I ultimately think that what we do, how we show up, how we serve those around us is what's going to keep them around. What better way to build positive relationships than to show people that you care about them, to show them that you acknowledge their needs, you hear what they're saying. And what better way to show that you care than to serve the needs of those people? I think our teachers appreciate that.
Good, good. Follow-up question. Can you talk a little bit more about the importance of the impact that the teachers have and how you remind them of that impact?
As I mentioned before, depending on who you ask, they're gonna call our teachers different things: rock stars, champions, extraordinary. The term I used today was heroes. As everyone here on the panel knows, and those that really appreciate good teaching, they know that teachers teach more than content. It's so much more than content. Teachers teach skills, life lessons, and teachers' legacies echo for lifetimes. And sometimes we don't even know how big a teacher's impact can be. Stories are pushed down from generation to generation. Lessons are continually taught back at home. Our superintendent here in our school district often reminds everybody to know thy impact. And when you start thinking about impact, you can have a negative impact, you can have a neutral impact, or hopefully you can have a purposeful and positive impact on people. We often remind our teachers because, as I said earlier, sometimes we can harp on the negative. There's a lot of negative out there surrounding what is going on in education, but I tell you, there's so much more positive than there is negative. And we have to be able to tell our stories. So one way we remind our teachers, we actually use a couple different strategies. One way is through our social media platforms. What you did is so impressive that we're going to show it to the world. We want the world to know what you're doing. We often use purposeful, intentional moments before meetings for teachers for celebrations, because we want you to have a moment, because sometimes we can get caught up in our own classrooms, our own bubbles, and it's so powerful to hear what's happening with other teachers in their classrooms. So we always use moments like these and moments beyond these to share what teachers are doing. One personal way that I make sure that I am reminding teachers is by saying thank you. I say thank you very frequently to teachers. I say it one-on-one, face-to-face. I acknowledge you. Thank you for what you've done. I say it in front of other people because I want other people to know the great work that you are doing. I also send cards to my teachers, and I leave them in different places. I want them to be surprised when they see it. I want them to go to their box and be caught off guard by the thank you. I want them to go to their teacher desk and find it and be caught off guard. But I want them, most importantly, to know that I am thankful for what they've done. You can never underestimate the power of a small moment. You can never underestimate the power of action, and especially the power of the written word. So making sure that we're saying thank you and telling the story of teachers is a great way to remind them of the impact that they make.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you for the positive impact and the positive relationship that you have with your teachers and your staff every single day. So we really appreciate everything that you are doing, and thank you for participating. And now I would like to invite Jeff, Troy, and Becky to join us. All right, great to have all of you back again, and thank you for sharing. So in the little bit of time that we have left for our Q&A, just have a couple of questions I'd like to ask. And the first one is, we know teacher pay is an issue that impacts retention. Besides teacher pay, what do you see as the other most critical issue to retain the best teachers?
Well, I'd like to start out by saying, on behalf of all teachers, I think we all wish Manso was our principal, because he very much gets this idea of celebrating teachers. And I spend a lot of time in schools, and I spend a lot of time with teachers across the country. And I would say that that feeling is not as present as people assume that it is. I think that teachers need to be viewed as talent. Just as somebody in the film industry, the talent matters. And I think that we have this mentality of like all teachers are good at the same things, et cetera, et cetera. So I think celebrating the talents of teachers, and definitely, as Jeff said, this idea of teachers being and feeling listened to and respected. So until we change to more of a teacher leadership model where teachers have more voice, I think it's going to be hard to retain them.
Great.
And I'm going to jump in and tie together 2 points that were made. The first by Jeff, where we want to acknowledge that surveys show that teachers leave the profession because they don't feel supported. They don't get me wrong, the financial piece is important. I wish we could pay teachers. I don't think we can pay them what they're worth, but I wish we could pay them. I wish we could increase their salaries, but they don't leave because of that. They're leaving because they don't feel supported. So Troy mentioned earlier the power of those teacher leaders. So when new teachers are coming in the field and they're getting started, we make sure that we're connecting them with a mentor teacher leader who can support them, give them strategies, and really just be like an additional support for them. Somebody who's in the classroom as well, who's living through it, who they can go to, ask questions, and get feedback from.
I would totally agree, man. So I think I would just add, my experience when I talk with individuals who enter these multi-classroom leader roles, who take on these teacher leader roles, pay is not the first thing they talk about. I mean, pay is a nice perk, but they really get into it because they lacked opportunities to move up in their profession, and that they know that they have this amazing skill set that they want to share with other teachers in their school building, and the opportunities just often aren't there. And so I think that the key critical piece, I would say, Lori, I would totally piggyback on Mansa there, is providing these opportunities for individuals, for teachers who are really effective to impart their knowledge on other teachers in their buildings.
Jeff, did you want to pipe in there? You're on mute.
There, thank you.
There you go.
Going back to what everyone said, pay is important, and I think it's important that, I'll speak about the District of Columbia, to have pay that's competitive with other jurisdictions, because you don't want to lose pay. You don't want to lose your teachers to other jurisdictions where the work environment may be similar. But you can never pay teachers what they're worth. There's just you're not. That's just not going to happen. So it is about having principles that create that environment, that culture, that work environment that treats the teachers with respect, empowers them, and makes sure that that's environment. And it's up to the state or the Board of Education to support those principals and those superintendents and whatever they are. We have to value our schools and our teachers, and so if there's a culture of appreciation, of respect, and where you can, empowerment, let teachers let them use their creativity, and that's, we often want people to do everything the same way. I've grown up and lived around teachers my whole life, and there's some that do it differently. Let them be different. Let them teach what they've learned and what they do. And so it's about how they're treated, how they're respected, how they feel welcomed. Again, you bring them on board and you throw them in a classroom and you just let them go, they're not going to stay. They're going to get frustrated and they're going to leave. They need the support services of other teachers, of their administration, and of their government if you really want to keep teachers. And we really, really need to keep teachers. It's an honorable and important profession. And that culture, that environment is what's going to do that. This pay is never going to be where we'd like it to be.
Great. We have time for you to just briefly tell us one primary focus area to promote retention. What would it be?
Appreciate the employee and empower them.
Great.
I'd say celebrate positive culture, celebrate teachers for what they do, change the narrative, stop focusing on these small negative moments, focus on all the positive things that are happening within our profession.
Great.
I would say create opportunities for teachers to extend their reach to more kids.
And I would say, let's take these pre-service teachers and connect them very early on with the schools and the teachers in their community, so they already go into the profession feeling connected, as everybody on the panel has suggested is one of the keys to keeping people in the field.
Great words of advice. So Troy, Becky, Jeff, and Mansa, thank you very much for sharing your words of wisdom today. We know that retention is a very important piece. My analogy is we have to figure out how to plug the holes in the bucket and keep the ones that we have inside and not lose them. And so I think the tips that you shared with us today will certainly help the field understand how to move forward in supporting the retentions of our qualified personnel. So again, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you,
guys.
Thank you, panelists, for sharing your experiences and your passion. Now I would like to introduce our final speaker. Mary Morningstar is a professor in special education at Portland State University and co-director of the Career in Community Studies program, a fully inclusive post-secondary education program for youth with intellectual disabilities. She's director of the Transition Coalition, a national center offering online, hybrid, and in-person professional development and resources for secondary special educators and transition practitioners.
Thank you, Lori, for the invitation to participate in the National Summit and to be able to reflect on the panel comments associated with retention of educators. So listening to the panelists share such innovative strategies truly energized me. I just want to give a little bit of background. I'm currently a professor in special education in the College of Ed at Portland State University. And Portland State is an anchor urban institution that's supporting the mission of contributing to and expanding a highly educated and diverse community by leading toward an equitable and sustainable future. And I think their mission really aligns with what I heard the panelists describing in terms of how we attract, retain highly qualified special educators. So if you look at the next slide, I did hear what I would say, first of all, I'd like to preface my remarks by reiterating Troy's comment that we're truly facing seismic changes in education. I think many of the traditional beliefs and structures of what it means to be a teacher in school is challenged by our current socio and cultural influences. But I also think when faced with such challenges, we can see that there's potent opportunities can emerge. And I think it was heartening to hear from such a diverse panel that we're describing some of those changes, and perhaps they're going to influence society's fundamental views of education. And I believe that will be necessary to lead towards the retention of high quality teachers. So I've identified some commonalities and through lines that I hope we as a field can grab hold of as we navigate the changes ahead. So if you look at the next slide, first I paraphrase the quote that Jeff mentioned of how teachers start determines how long they stay. That really resonated for me throughout the discussion. And so as you can see, the first sort of bucket of content that the panelists all discussed was problem solving. And Becky led the way with a description of their innovative ways to ensure that teacher candidates are engaged early and throughout their training. I think that the integration of clinical preparation through all of field experiences is essential. And I loved the phrase that she used that by embedding content across field experiences, we're helping teachers to learn to be nimble. I think this nimbleness is really pushing against the prescriptive models and standardization of teacher preparation, and particularly teacher evaluations that we've seen are not working, particularly in the current context that we face in education. So we do need to prepare teachers who welcome that change, and we need to change our performance measures to align with this problem-solving orientation. And I think Jeff described a new performance measure that we want to hook into, associated with 50% of his employees are measured based on that value base of the culture of his organization, and then 50% are the technical skills with which in education for teachers that would be knowledge, instruction, and curriculum. I think that teacher residency models that were described by both Troy and Becky, leading to that immersion in a single school, are models that are many universities have been orienting towards and implementing. I know here at Portland State, we use a similar innovative model within our dual licensure program. That's a general ed and special ed licensure, that those teacher candidates are immersed in those experiences in a single school. The grow your own models that were described by panelists, as well as I loved the idea of using undergrads serving as teaching assistants and getting paid in the school in which they're also completing coursework. It all ties within the professional development school models that many universities have used successfully. And I think we need to continue to build those problem-solving models early in a candidate's experience. So the next major bucket, this values-based culture, I think is so essential, especially within educational leadership. So Mansa's views of leadership, that his primary role is to support and serve the teachers so they have what they need to be successful. And what I heard from him in terms of, we sort of have operated for years now under this standard-based movement. And what I heard Mansa say is the individual students achieving their best capacity is the standard. The standard is, I think, how he phrased that. So how we're supporting all students to grow and learn and to not just pass assessments, I think is essential. Many of the administrators mentioned that people leave their jobs because of their supervisors. And so having educational leadership that's a mentoring, respectful approach is I think our future in terms of this values-based culture. And that's primarily associated with how we're building relationships and building trust within the educational system. I refer to this as walking the talk. And I think Manza did an incredible job describing how he's observing, giving critical feedback, supporting mentorship, allowing teachers to collaborate. It's really having their backs to do the hard work that's necessary. That's what's going to lead to the respectful environments that are so necessary within schools, and that we know are one of the essential components of why teachers remain in even challenging schools. And I think Jeff reiterating his comment about how teachers start will influence how long they stay, and that we've got to begin this process with a culture that's showing respect and mentorship from the beginning. I also heard several of the speakers, both Becky and Peter, described the importance of self-care and wellness. So how we ensure that teachers get the space that they need in order to maintain their own balance in life as a part of their performance and the time in schools. So the third area that I heard many of the panelists, in fact, all of them, talked about those opportunities in space to be listened to, and how educators can contribute to the overall mission and be those problem solvers to action that make things better within an educational context. And that's really how we're building empowerment within the school culture. And I think that was recognized. The strategies that were described by the panelists include recognizing top employees, these teacher leaders, ensuring that teacher leadership models have the voice that's listened to, and that they are active members of the team that's going at the systems level that's going to be associated with change. Troy's model, opportunity model of advancement, several of the panelists described that teachers need that sense of advancement, and I truly believe that we have to build that in, similar to any industry, any profession. I love the ideas of having expert teachers freeing up some of their time throughout their day to build and support those novice teachers who need the additional support coming in, which we all know is a critical period of time. The first 3 to 5 years of a teacher's career is absolutely essential. And the more we can mentor and collaborate and bring people up into a system, I think is absolutely critical to maintaining them. And it really is the educational leadership, the principals, and the other leadership staff in the building who can develop that culture in order to treat teachers with respect. And in fact, going beyond the building at the district level, the state level, and I think nationally, we need to shift our conversation from what's wrong with schools to establishing and promoting what's right and what's working and where innovation exists and how we continue to move that forward and scale up that level of innovation. So some of it is redesigning those staffing patterns so that we allow teachers to become into that coaching model, which is often, we've seen a lot of coaching models existing in the past, but they often come and go depending on the funding. And professional development and coaching is often the first thing that is cut out of a budget. And Troy's comments about how we have to really work to reconfigure budgeting so that we build in the coaching model into the bones of a school system is really essential. So finally, and this is really what I'd like to wrap up with, is I've been doing work recently with colleagues from around the country now, and really thinking about what I heard, problem solving, this values-based culture, empowerment. It really associated for me with the research around defining teacher agency. And it's really not just about making teachers feel good about themselves. You know, we can give all the compliments in the world to teachers in a school, but if we're not actually changing the infrastructure and the culture and the acknowledgement of teachers in a leadership position, those kudos really are going to fall flat. So acknowledging the importance and lifting up the status of the profession, so that teachers are at the systems level table to identify those critical strategies for retaining colleagues. We've got to be able to build that if we're going to maintain and retain teachers, given the huge numbers. In a recent study, over 50% of teachers left the field because of job satisfaction, and that job satisfaction was often related to a lack of career advancement and professional growth. I think Peter's examples of within the business industry and major corporations, the importance of career advancement and professional growth really resonated. And for me, teacher agency is this, it includes dispositions, but also primarily action. And building up against the constraints that currently exist within education, while at the same time we're creating those enabling structures that are going to lead to agency and empowerment. So finally, my final concluding thoughts, if we go to the last slide, this is a quote from Vista, and the quote is, "Agency is not something teachers have, but something that they do. Agencies is teachers actively contributing to the shaping of their work and its conditions." So it is action-oriented. It requires high expectations and dispositions towards action in order to enact change. It also requires the systems that are surrounding those teachers to allow them to act purposefully and constructively, so that their professional growth and contribution to the growth of their colleagues as well. I think on a tactical level, this means that districts and states and federal agencies really need to build those systems that empower teachers to be decision makers and innovators. That came up throughout the panel conversation, this sense of the need to allow teachers to innovate. And it sounds good in theory. It can be really difficult to execute, as we all know. And it's going to require some fundamental, perhaps seismic changes within education, so we can truly empower teachers at the systems level, giving them roles that make a difference in making decisions across different levels, so that teachers are able to innovate. So in conclusion, I just want to congratulate OSEP on this exciting new format, and to thank the leadership for providing me with the remarkable opportunity, first to listen to such thoughtful speakers, and also then to share a few of my reflections. So thank you, Lori, and the folks behind the scenes at OSEP. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mary, and to all our presenters today. Peter, Jeff, Becky, Troy, Manza. This panel, as well as the previous ones, has certainly given me some new ideas to consider and boost of inspiration too. Over the last 3 days, we've explored innovative strategies to attract, prepare, and retain the workforce we all know we need, and the workforce we know every child with a disability deserves. Our population of students has changed. The settings in which students are educated has expanded. Our knowledge about students learn best has improved. And most importantly, the population that is attracted to teaching as a profession has changed. We will not experience the outcomes we need in education without reconceptualizing how we attract, prepare, and retain our workforce to educate students with disabilities. One theme throughout the summit has been the critical realization that these issues are not for schools and districts to solve on their own, but rather issues that require a collaborative approach. An effective educator workforce impacts the success of the future, not just the educational outcomes of our students, but also the future successes of our communities. From our speakers on attraction, we learned that we need to expand our concepts of students that may be potential teacher candidates. We need to find them in high school and non-traditional settings, and we need to give them early hands-on experiences to spark their interest in teaching and support their journey as they enter and successfully support their formal training. For those from the fields considering teaching as a second career, especially teachers who want to return to the workforce, we need to build easier pathways to capitalize on their interests. We also saw the mind shift needed to celebrate and promote teaching as a noble profession it is. From our speakers on preparation, we learned to expand our concept of preparation, not only reference the formal pre-service education, but also to follow them as they walk into the doors of their classroom, supporting and growing them with experienced mentor teachers to ensure success in the induction phase. We also explored teacher residency programs and micro-credentials as emerging practices worthy of scale-up. And we agreed on the need to enhance teacher skills to ensure that they are prepared to effectively engage in the diversity of students found in our schools and programs today. Today, from our speakers on retention, we explored the importance of deliberative attention to retaining effective teachers. We learned how professional development needs to match and extend throughout the teacher's career, and how coaches for beginning and veteran teachers should be viewed as critical support structures rather than extra staff. We also explored the many ways principals and other leaders must intentionally support and empower teachers to lead from the classroom, so our most effective teachers stay where we need them most, in the classroom, building relationships, interacting, and instructing our students. As I have shared the last 2 days, we structured this event not as a culminating one of our work to date, but rather an infusion of thought and possibility into the ongoing discussions of work being done by organizations, training institutions, schools, and individuals all over this country. We hope that you have found this summit useful as we explored innovative and evidence-based practices and approaches. Over the next several months, we will continue to engage practitioners and experts around these 3 areas in focus groups and through the Attract, Prepare, and Retain webpage to collect, prioritize, and disseminate strategies and practices to enable us all to improve our ability to attract, prepare, and retain effective personnel. We have discussed this week that the changes and improvements we need to make will take a collective effort. OSEP is committed to engaging with you and supporting you in your individual and collective efforts. And I would challenge us all to engage in broader collective efforts to ensure that we find one, grow one, and thank one. Thank you for being with us, and please share the information we have shared with you. Thank you for your continued supports and commitment to improving outcomes for children with disabilities. A special thank you to the OSEP staff and AIR for their continued support with this initiative. Take care and be safe.